Let's get ready because the next pandemic is coming. Last week, the World Health Organization told us that the pandemic is over, but we should get ready for the next one because it's coming. And right on cue, the UK government today, this morning, announced it's testing for a new avian flu outbreak. This is the UK news this morning. Watch.
A little bit of breaking news we can bring you, coming from the UK Health Security Agency, and it regards bird flu. You will recall that there was a real concern about it being passed from wild birds to housed poultry in the UK over the last few months. Those regulations have now eased, but they have been doing testing on those who work in the poultry industry, and they've announced that avian influenza has been detected in 2 people taking part in this government testing programme.
So now let's take all of the chickens all in Europe and burn them. Let's kill all of the chickens. Like, that's going to be the next plan here. That they're going to round up tens of thousands of chickens and cull them.
And also the fact that they're testing for asymptomatic flu, right? So again, we've seen this before where it's like, you might have this, I feel fine. You're not fine. Your body's a weapon. Where has that been used before?
Yeah, I can't recall where that's been used before. So here's The Guardian. Here's the headline of The Guardian. Bird flu could become the next human pandemic and politicians aren't paying attention, Debbie Sridhar says. So, yeah. So again, The Guardian jumping all over this, just like the UK government jumping all over this. Avian flu detected in 2 individuals taking part in testing programs. So The Guardian, this is like the thing that the problem is the next human pandemic, politicians aren't paying attention to it right now because we've been so fatigued. This is the point of the piece. Basically, we're so fatigued with COVID that we're going to get smacked in the face with this next massive pandemic. So we better buckle down and start putting our money and our resources into this. Otherwise, we're going to be in real trouble.
Well, also on the news of just last month, pharmaceutical companies were saying that they are testing the bird flu vaccine on humans just in case. That's what they literally said, just in case. So now we're testing for it in humans. We've got a vaccine at the ready just in case it does something bad to human bodies, even though we have no proof of human-to-human transmission.
So the next pandemic might already be here, according to these clowns, and they're telling us it's going to be worse than before. They're going to tell us that's what they're telling us already, and that it's going to specifically be targeting children. Yes, children's hospitals already getting ready for this. Children's hospitals prepare for next pandemic. Joins a network of pediatric hospitals across the country. They're using what they've learned from COVID to offer better protection next time without prolonged and damaging shutdowns. And this isn't us saying this. This is what we've been hearing for months on this show. We've been warning you on this show for more than a year that Bill Gates and others have been warning that children will be hit the hardest. They've been telling us that in the next pandemic, we've said it countless times here on the show, that the focus will be on children because the way that the vaccines were administered, there was that real slowdown and pushback as it came to children, remember? Mm-hmm. And now we've said it countless times on this show, and it's now enough that it's not enough that the last pandemic they created took years off of children's growth by putting masks on these kids, forcing vaccines on these kids, putting all of these awful remote learning techniques into effect, which were a total disaster. We had the report last week about America's test scores for children. America's test scores are now the lowest in history.
Yeah.
Kids were set back by 2 years of cognitive development thanks to this charade, the socialization, the fear of like talking to other human beings. There's a story this afternoon that shows depression is now at an all-time high. Depression.
Yes. But I want to push back a little bit on that because psychologists know that once you name a disorder, it will automatically have a social contagion. We saw that happen with bulimia. As soon as Princess Di had it, there was an outbreak of bulimia. We see this absolutely with gender dysphoria. We've seen it with anorexia. And so when you tell people there is an outbreak of anxiety and depression, there is a pharmaceutical industry waiting to fix that for you. So I think it's really dangerous to sort of validate these concerns of outbreaks of mental disorders because it has an effect of social contagion and it is leading to the mass pharmaceuticalization, if that's a word, of humans. And I think that's dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous. I mean, no one else is really sounding the alarm about this. I know Alex Jones has been one of the only other people sounding the alarm about this. Good for him, about drawing awareness about how they're planning to do this. And no media organizations are diving into asking the real questions, the tough questions as to why they're actively getting us ready for this next pandemic. Like, why are they telling us that this is going to happen? And they're giving us specific dates around when this is going to happen. Really? Should that not raise any red flags? So many of these things were talked about and predicted ahead of time from Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci and these leaders who were out in Wyoming telling us that this was all coming. And then a few months later it comes. And why are these people not dragged before prosecutorial bodies and questioned? They knew that this was coming.
Well, you think about the psychological game that this offers you, because most of us believe, oh, if I had the pandemic to go over again, I would push back more, or I would question these narratives, or I wouldn't go along with this. That's how I feel anyway. But if you drag my kids into it and say, oh, but this could be really bad for your children, I don't know that I'm going to then be ready for that. I'm a lot more scared. Like, okay, if you tell me that there's asymptomatic bird flu out there and I might be an asymptomatic carrier, I'm less afraid of that at this point than if I think that it could be bad for my kids. And then I'm like, okay, we're going back into lockdown, right?
Well, yeah. And here's the front page of the Atlantic magazine. This is the next stage of COVID is starting now, they're telling us. The next stage of COVID is starting now. Will it be called COVID? I don't know. Last week, Chelsea Clinton announced her plan to get every child vaccinated and caught up to speed, she says. The timing of this is all amazing, isn't it? When they're warning us that children will be the target of the next pandemic. And here Chelsea Clinton is launching this program, really wants to work with the World Health Organization to get everybody caught up on any kind of vaccines so that we are prepared for this next pandemic. Listen.
A new effort that we're a part of is the new initiative launched by the World Health Organization last week to try to catch kids up on their routine immunizations. In 2021 alone, more than 25 million kids under the age of 1 missed at least one routine immunization. And so we're working with WHO and the Gates Foundation and others to hopefully have the largest kind of childhood immunization effort ever.
Okay, question. I have a question.
Yes, Natalie, go ahead.
Your mother as Secretary of State was involved in destroying the economies in Libya and Syria. Those children don't have access to any vaccines or medicine at all. Do we care about them or screw them?
No, under Syria, under sanctions, they will not still allow to be getting any kind of medicines and all of that. But now I guess...
Okay, screw those kids, but American kids. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question. Can I go? So when you talk about routine, I love how she just quickly skirted past Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She's like, we're working with the World Health Organization and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And she then talks about the routine immunization schedule, right? So what then sits on this routine immunization schedule? The push, of course, is to put COVID or some these mRNA vaccines on the routine COVID schedule, right? These are the things that are being pushed onto this new round of immunization for children. So, it's amazing, what will sit, it sounds innocuous, we're just going after polio. Are you? Is that what you're really just focused on, is polio? Or is it other things that have now been stuck on side of this immunization schedule that we should be talking about? The other stuff. Now, this is the same WHO that announced the COVID pandemic was over just a few days ago. Yes, here's the thing. You have to close down the trial run first. The COVID trial run. How do we do lockdowns? How do we get people in masks? How do we distribute vaccines? That was our trial run. You have to close that piece down first, as Bill Gates admits later. We'll play you that, in order to make way for the real pandemic, which is the big one. Listen to Tedros.
It's therefore with great hope that I declare COVID-19 over as a global health emergency. However, that does not mean COVID-19 is over as a global health threat. Last week, COVID-19 claimed life every 3 minutes. And that's just the deaths we know about. As we speak, thousands of people around the world are fighting for their lives in intensive care units.
Yeah. So they've gotten together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, along with Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security and the World Health Organization, and they recently conducted their next pandemic tabletop exercise in Belgium. We showed you this a little bit ago. It's called the Catastrophic Contagion Event, and this is the video that they put together as part of this event where they're planning this out. They've already been tabletop planning this and getting ready for it. It's called Get Ready. Watch.
Officials in 2 Latin American countries alerted the WHO of several outbreaks of a new infectious disease that's mysteriously appearing across the region. Severe Epidemic Enterovirus Respiratory Syndrome 2025. Over the past 6 weeks alone, there have been 500 confirmed or suspected cases reported. The virus could cause a severe pandemic if early containment and mitigation efforts are not successful.
The pandemic in this type of situation and trend would be a risk for the global health security.
Pandemics are inherently political, financial, and so much broader.
We have not spoken on the leadership in country. And I think that we need to be also very careful. We cannot decide a lot of things without the leaders be involved and agree on that.
There is no substitute for national leadership.
It's important to support the local response or the national response.
Training those that are in these areas first, enabling them with the tools, protecting them, and if needs be, regional solidarity first.
At this stage, communication is key.
Yeah. So the virus they use in this simulation is called the enterovirus. It has a higher fatality rate than, of course, than COVID-19. Disproportionately affects children and young people. How convenient.
Doesn't it feel like COVID was just a warm-up?
Yeah.
Like, let's see how these a-holes react to this.
And look, I know that sounds like a conspiracy theory. Go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say, it's almost like they were upset that children didn't really get affected by COVID. And they're like, damn it, we missed our opportunity. You
right.
know, it's like we really could have landed this, but we missed that one part. Let's do it again.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it feels, right? And this is the thing that Bill Gates talks about. He just was in an interview where he talked about how, we need to get past part 1 of this, which is getting rid of the first pandemic, like close that down officially. So we close that narrative down, and then we move on to the second piece. Watch.
Well, we have to do 2 things at once. We have to bring this epidemic to an end, primarily by getting the vaccine out in large numbers to the entire world. And we have to make sure that we're ready because there will be another pandemic. And there's so many lessons about how we weren't prepared, how we should have handled things differently. And, when that's clearly in our mind, those investments need to be made.
And what his investments are specifically is he talking about? Well, number 1 on his list is surveillance. He wants to spend $1 billion making sure that we have this infrastructure in place on surveillance. So we'd be watching everybody, how these vaccines are distributed, your movements, how it's all of it to be able to watch you. Here he is admitting that number 1 on this list, and it wouldn't cost as much as climate change legislation, $10 trillion. No, it'd be a lot less expensive. But number 1 on his list is surveillance for the next pandemic. Watch.
The cost of being ready for the next pandemic is not super large. It's not like climate change where, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, these are big numbers. Global surveillance capability would cost like $1 billion a year. The R&D that we need to do to get magic vaccines and diagnostics and therapeutics, that's less than $100 billion over the next decade. So, if we're rational, yes, the next time we'll catch it early, and it won't go global like it did this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, surveillance is on the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty that they're working to pass in the next few days.
Yeah, so this is all timely, right? In the next few days, they'll vote on this.
Surveillance that would surpass the laws in wherever you live. Just global power. Global
surveillance without the local laws, right? Yeah. So It would supersede your nation, your sovereignty, and it would cede power to this global alliance of billionaires.
Yes.
Yeah, these unelected billionaires. So,
well, the other thing that I think about when we kind of talk about this stuff is that, like, when you look historically, like, what is there historical evidence that pandemics have ever gone back to back? You know, like that they've been so recently following each other.
Yeah, like we talk about Spanish flu. Spanish flu was like 115 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? And so then we're having another one like within 2 years, 3 years. They tell us in their tabletop exercise 2025. Right?
Also, it gives them the right to define pandemics and also define pandemics in terms of information as well. So not only will we tell you what constitutes a pandemic, so it could be as innocuous as a cold going around, but everyone's got it. We don't like these numbers. This is a pandemic. Our powers kick in. And then also the idea of infodemics is if you're not thinking right about it, that also constitutes a pandemic. Oh, people aren't believing us enough. This is a bad cold.
Yeah.
This is an infodemic. Our powers kick in there too. And we've gone over this. We've shown it to you, these documents. This is not my extrapolation of it. I wish it were. I'm not that panicked about it until you see it in black and white. Go ahead.
And they're saying 2025 in this pandemic exercise, but then you have these mainstream media organizations we just showed you saying that it's happening now. Like this next pandemic is starting right now. The Atlantic magazine saying this is the next stage. We're already here. And then you have the UK government saying, we're worried about this enterovirus. Like this could be the next major global pandemic as an asymptomatic problem.
Yeah.
So let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. And what I'm really concerned about is the targeting of children in all of this. And we should push back against these leaders and tell them we don't want to be a part of this World Health Organization plan. And we don't want to cede our local and national sovereignty to this unelected body of globalists. Anyway.
Right. Now, in the next segment, we're going to talk about doctors and physicians who were pushing back against the COVID-19 pandemic and were not getting any traction there at all. This is a good lesson for us on how to listen to varied voices for freedom of speech, for those types, for non-censorship communities.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.